She said, "I've been alone 6 years." And I asked why. But her answer wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a man's name. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't bitterness. It was something so quiet and so heavy that it made me set down every tool in my hand and just listen. She walked into my veterinary clinic 11 minutes before closing, carrying a dog that wasn't hers, bleeding from a gash it couldn't explain, and she held that animal against her chest like she had been practicing how to save things that couldn't ask for help. Her coat was damp. Her shoes were wrong for the weather. But her hands were steady, and her voice didn't shake when she said, "I found him on the road. I couldn't just drive past." I'm Dr. Caleb Mercer. I've run this small-town clinic for 9 years. I've treated animals that bite when they're scared, animals that go silent when they're dying, and animals that press against the back of the cage, waiting to see if you'll reach in anyway. But I had never seen a human being walk through my door and remind me of every single one of them at the same time. Her name was Nadia. The town had talked about her for 6 years. 6 years alone in the old Hargrove cottage at the edge of Edmund Lane. No husband, no boyfriend, no visitors. People said a man destroyed her. People said she was fragile. People said she chose loneliness because she couldn't handle love. But people were wrong. Because when I finally asked her why she had been alone for 6 years, she looked at me with eyes that weren't broken. They were exhausted. And she gave me an answer that changed the way I understood every single thing about sacrifice, about silence, and about what it really means to love someone so deeply that you disappear to do it. But why 6 years exactly? What promise was she keeping, and to whom? What was she protecting behind that quiet cottage door that the whole town had been too blind to see? And why, after all that time alone, did she walk into my clinic on that specific night, carrying something wounded she had no reason to save? I took the dog from her arms carefully. The gash ran along its left hind leg, deep but clean, probably from a fence wire or a broken bottle on the roadside. The animal was shaking, but it didn't snap at me. It just looked up with wide brown eyes like it was deciding whether I was safe. I carried it to the exam table and turned on the overhead light. The fluorescent buzz filled the room. I could smell rain on her jacket and something faint underneath it, something warm like cinnamon and old wood, the kind of smell that lives in a house that has been kept quiet for a long time. She stood by the door like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to stay. "You can come closer," I said without looking up. "He won't bite. He's past the biting stage." "How do you know?" she asked. "Because he's leaning into my hand instead of pulling away," I said. "When they lean in, they've already decided to trust you. It's the ones that go completely still you have to worry about." She stepped closer. "Not all the way. Just enough to see the wound." "Is it bad?" she asked. "It looks worse than it is," I said. "The bleeding made it dramatic, but the muscle underneath is fine. He just needs cleaning, stitches, and someone to keep him still long enough to heal." She watched my hands as I worked. I could feel her watching. Not nervous, not suspicious, just focused, like she was studying how I touched something that was in pain. "You're gentle with him," she said quietly. "He's scared," I answered. "Gentle is the only language scared understands." She went quiet after that. I cleaned the wound, numbed the area, and started stitching. The dog whimpered once, and she flinched like she felt it in her own body. "Hey," I said softly, not to her, to the dog. "Almost done. You're doing better than most humans I know." The corner of her mouth moved. Not a smile, just the beginning of one that didn't quite make it. When I finished, I wrapped the leg and set the dog in a recovery crate with a warm towel. He circled once, then curled up and closed his eyes. She stared at him through the wire door. "He trusts you already," she said. "He doesn't trust me," I replied. "He's just too tired to fight. Trust comes later, after he wakes up and I'm still here." She looked at me then, really looked at me. Not the way people look at their vet when they want a diagnosis. The way someone looks at you when you accidentally said something that hit a nerve you didn't know was exposed. "What's your name?" I asked. "Nadia," she said. "Nadia Hargrove." "The cottage on Edmund Lane," I said. She nodded once, and something behind her eyes tightened. "People talk about that cottage," I said, keeping my voice neutral, not gossipy, just honest. "People talk about a lot of things they don't understand," she replied. The room went quiet except for the soft breathing of the dog. Rain tapped against the clinic window. I pulled off my gloves and washed my hands, giving her space without leaving. "He'll need to stay overnight," I said. "I'll monitor the stitches. You can come back in the morning." She didn't move. "What happens if no one claims him?" she asked. "Then he becomes a decision," I said. "Shelter, foster, or someone steps up." "And if no one steps up, someone usually does," I said. "It just takes longer than it should." She looked at the crate one more time, then back at me. "I'll come back in the morning," she said. But the way she said it didn't sound like a plan. It sounded like a promise. She left, and the clinic felt emptier than it should have for a place I'd stood in alone 1,000 nights before. I locked the front door, turned off the overhead lights, and sat in the chair beside the recovery crate. The dog opened one eye, looked at me, then closed it again. "Yeah," I said quietly to no one. "I don't know what just happened either." But that was a lie. I knew exactly what happened. Something walked through my door that I wasn't prepared for. And I don't mean the dog. She came back the next morning, 7:15. I hadn't even flipped the open sign yet. I was in the back checking the dog's stitches when I heard a soft knock on the glass door. Not loud, not impatient. The kind of knock that says, "I'm here, but I'll leave if you want me to." I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the front. She was standing outside with 2 paper cups of coffee. Her hair was pulled back loose. She wore a different jacket than last night, tan and oversized, like it belonged to someone bigger. She wasn't smiling, but her face was softer than it had been the night before, like sleep had taken one layer of armor off. I unlocked the door. "You're early," I said. "You said morning," she replied. "This is morning." I took the coffee she held out. It was still hot. She had walked here. No car in the lot. That meant she came from the cottage on foot, which was almost 2 miles through town. She walked 2 miles at 7 in the morning to check on a dog she found on the road. "He's doing well," I said, leading her to the back. "Ate a little, drank water, didn't chew the bandage, which makes him smarter than half my patients." She crouched beside the crate, and the dog lifted his head. His tail moved once, slow, cautious. Not a wag, just an acknowledgement. "Hey," she whispered. "Remember me?" The dog blinked and then pressed his nose against the wire. She slid her fingers through and touched the top of his head. Her whole body changed. Her shoulders dropped. Her breathing slowed. Whatever she carried when she walked through that door, she set it down the moment she touched him. I leaned against the counter and watched. Not because I was studying her, because I couldn't look away. "Does he have a chip?" she asked without turning around. "No chip, no collar, no record at the shelter. I called around this morning. Nobody's reported a missing dog matching his description." "So he's no one's," she said quietly. "He's no one's," I confirmed. She was quiet for a long time. Her fingers moved gently behind his ear. The dog closed his eyes. "I can't take him," she finally said. "I want to, but I can't." "Okay," I said. "No pressure, no guilt." "It's not about want," she added, like she needed me to understand. "My situation is complicated." "Most situations are," I said. She stood and looked at me. There was a fight happening behind her eyes, something she wanted to say and something stopping her from saying it. "Can I visit him?" she asked. "While he recovers?" "Doors open at 7, I said. "Coffee's appreciated, but not required." That almost smile came back. Closer this time, still didn't land, but it was trying. She came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Always early, always with coffee, always crouching beside the crate and talking to the dog in a low voice, like she was telling him things she couldn't say out loud to anyone else. By the fourth day, the dog would hear her footsteps on the gravel outside and start wagging before she even opened the door. By the fifth day, he barked once when she was late. By the sixth day, I realized I was listening for her footsteps too. On the seventh morning, she didn't come alone. I heard the door open and looked up expecting to see Nadia with 2 coffees. Instead, I saw Nadia with 3, and beside her stood a girl, 11 years old, maybe 12, thin frame, dark hair pulled into a braid that looked like she had done it herself. She wore a backpack with a keychain shaped like a cat hanging from the zipper. Her eyes were sharp and careful. She looked around the clinic the way animals look at new rooms, checking exits, measuring distance, deciding if this place was safe. "Caleb," Nadia said, and it was the first time she used my first name. "This is Iris." The girl looked at me. No smile, no wave, just a long, steady look that said, "I'm watching you." "Hey, Iris," I said calmly, same voice I use with the animals that need time. "There's someone in the back who's been waiting all morning." Iris looked at Nadia. Nadia nodded. The girl walked past me slowly, each step measured, and stopped in front of the recovery crate. The dog stood up the second he saw her, tail going, ears forward. He pressed himself against the wire and whined softly. Iris crouched down and the dog licked her fingers through the grate. Something in her face cracked open. Not a lot, just enough. She looked back at Nadia with wide eyes. "He likes me," she said. Her voice was smaller than I expected. "Younger. He has good taste," Nadia replied softly. I watched them from across the room, the girl and the dog, the woman and the silence. There was a story in this room that I didn't have yet, but I could feel its weight. Later, after Iris sat on the floor reading a book with the dog's head resting against the crate door beside her, Nadia stepped outside. I followed, not close, just near. She leaned against the wall of the clinic and, looked at the sky like she was searching for weather that hadn't arrived yet. "She's your daughter?" I asked. "My niece," she said. And then, after a pause that lasted long enough for me to hear the sprinklers across the street click on, she added, "My sister's daughter." The word sister came out different, heavier, past tense without her even saying it. "Iris's mother passed 6 years ago," Nadia said. "Sudden, no warning. Iris was 5, no father in the picture. The family wanted to put her in the system. They said I was too young, too single, too unstable to raise a child." She turned the coffee cup in her hands slowly, round and round. "So I quit my job, sold my apartment, moved to this town where no one knew me. And I raised her, alone, because that's what I promised my sister I would do if anything ever happened." The air between us changed. Everything I thought I knew rearranged itself. 6 years, I said quietly. 6 years, she repeated. No dating, no social life, no distractions, just Iris, just keeping my word. I stood there and let the silence hold. I didn't try to fill it. I didn't say I'm sorry. I didn't say that's incredible. I just let her words exist in the open air without rushing to wrap them in something comfortable. "People in town think a man broke me," she said with a short breath that was almost a laugh. "They think I'm hiding from heartbreak. And instead you were keeping a promise," I said. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but nothing fell. "I wasn't alone because I was broken, Caleb," she said. "I was alone because she needed all of me, and I didn't have anything left to give anyone else." From inside the clinic, I could hear Iris talking softly to the dog, telling him about a book she was reading, something about a girl who lived in a forest. The dog made a small sound like he was answering. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, not suspicious, just honest. Nadia looked through the window at Iris. "Because she asked me this morning why we keep coming to see the dog," Nadia said. "And I didn't have a good answer. And for the first time in 6 years, I think the answer might not just be about the dog." She didn't look at me when she said it, but I felt every word land. I wanted to say something. Something right. Something that matched the size of what she had just handed me. But the door opened and Iris stuck her head out. "The dog is doing a weird thing with his paw," she said, serious as a surgeon. "That's called stretching," I said. "It looked dramatic," she replied. "He's a dramatic patient," I said. Iris almost smiled. Almost. Then she disappeared back inside. Nadia looked at me one more time. "Thank you," she said, "for not making it weird." "For not making what weird?" I asked. "Me," she said simply. She walked back inside before I could respond, and I stood there against the wall of my own clinic, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, realizing that in 9 years of healing things that couldn't speak, I had never once heard someone say so much by saying so little. And the thing that scared me most was not what she told me. It was how much I wanted her to keep talking. The days that followed changed shape, not dramatically, quietly. Nadia and Iris kept coming every morning. The coffee became a ritual. Iris started doing her homework on the floor of the recovery room with the dog curled beside her through the crate door. She named him without asking permission, called him Soldier. When I asked why, she said because he got hurt and didn't quit. Soldier healed faster than I expected. The stitches came out clean. The leg bore weight again. The morning I opened the crate and let him walk free across the clinic floor, Iris dropped to her knees and he went straight to her. Not to me, not to Nadia, to the girl who had been reading him stories through a wired door for 2 weeks. He put his head in her lap and she wrapped both arms around him and buried her face in his neck. Nadia stood in the doorway watching. Her hand came up to her mouth and she pressed hard like she was holding something in. "He can't go to the shelter," Iris said into the dog's fur. "He can't." "Iris," Nadia started. "He chose me," the girl said. "You always told me that love is a choice. He chose me." The room went still. Nadia's eyes filled. She looked at me like she was asking a question she didn't know how to say out loud. "He's healthy," I said carefully. "He's gentle. He needs a home that's patient and quiet and consistent." I paused. "I can think of one that fits." Nadia wiped her eyes. "We'll take him home," she said quietly. Iris smiled, full and real and wide. And Soldier's tail swept the floor like he understood every word. That evening I helped them walk Soldier back to the cottage. First time I had been inside. Yellow walls in the kitchen, books everywhere, stacked on shelves, on the counter, on the windowsill beside candles. It smelled like cinnamon and old pages. Iris took Soldier to her room immediately. I could hear her through the thin wall explaining which corner was his and which blanket he could use. Nadia stood in the kitchen, watching me look around. "It's small," she said. "It's honest," I replied. "Caleb," she said. "Yeah." "Why are you here?" "I helped carry the dog. That's not what I mean." "I know what you mean," I said. "I'm here because you let me be. You spent 6 years not letting anyone in. You let me in. I'm not going to waste that by saying something I haven't earned yet." "I'm not an animal, Caleb," she said. "No," I agreed. "You're harder to read." She laughed. Quiet and short, but real. The first time I heard her laugh, it sounded like something that hadn't been used in a long time and was remembering how to work. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived. Nadia was at my clinic when her phone rang. She stepped outside, and when she came back, her face was white. Not sad, not angry. Drained. "Iris's biological father," she said. "His name is Derek. He disappeared before she was born. Never signed anything, never paid anything, never showed up. Not once in 11 years. He filed for custody this morning." "On what grounds?" I asked. "His attorney is claiming I have no legal adoption finalized, limited income, no partner, no support system. They're calling my home environment insufficient." "What does he actually want?" I asked. "His new wife wants a child. This is cheaper than starting from scratch." Something hot and protective moved through my chest. "What do you need?" I asked. "A lawyer I can't afford, and a miracle." "I know a family attorney in Dayton," I said. "She's good. She's fair. And she owes me a favor because I saved her daughter's horse." "Caleb, this isn't your fight." "You're right," I said, "but I'm standing in it anyway." The next 3 weeks were a blur. Karen took the case at a reduced rate. We gathered everything: school records, medical records, letters from teachers, her pediatrician, the librarian who said Iris came in every Saturday without fail. I wrote a letter too, not as a boyfriend, as a community member who had watched a guarded child open up week by week in a home that was small and quiet, but full of something that could not be faked. Iris didn't know about the custody filing at first, but kids feel shifts in the air. They hear phone calls that end too quickly. They notice when the person who keeps them safe stops sleeping. One evening, I was at the cottage helping Nadia sort through files when Iris came out of her room with Soldier at her heels. She stood in the hallway looking at the papers spread across the kitchen table. "Is someone trying to take me away?" she asked. The room stopped. Nadia didn't lie. She didn't soften it. "Someone is trying," Nadia said. "But I won't let them." "Is it him?" Iris asked. She didn't say his name. She didn't need to. "Yes," Nadia said. Iris was quiet for a long moment. Soldier pressed against her leg. "He never came," Iris said. Her voice was flat, not sad, just factual. "Not once, not on my birthday, not when I was sick, not when I had the school play, and you sat in the front row by yourself because no one else came." Nadia's face cracked. She pulled Iris into her arms and held her tight. Over Nadia's shoulder, Iris looked at me. For the first time, she didn't look cautious. She looked like she was asking me something without words. "Are you staying or leaving?" I sat down at the table and picked up the next document. Something shifted in that girl's eyes. Small, but permanent. The hearing came on a Tuesday. Courtroom 4B. Nadia wore a navy dress I had never seen. Her hands were steady. Derek sat on the other side with his wife and his attorney. He looked polished, clean shave, good suit. He smiled at the judge like they were at a dinner party. Karen laid out 6 years of evidence. Attendance records, medical checkups, Iris's reading level 2 grades above average, report cards, letters from teachers describing a quiet girl who always turned in her work and always said please and thank you. Then Karen read my letter, the part about Iris walking into my clinic checking exits and measuring distance. The part about how she named a stray dog Soldier because he got hurt and didn't quit. The part about how a child who trusts no one sat on the floor of a veterinary clinic reading stories to a wounded animal because someone in that small yellow kitchen had taught her that caring for something in pain is not weakness, but the deepest kind of strength. Nadia didn't look at me while it was being read. She looked straight ahead, but her knuckles turned white, gripping the edge of the table. Derek's attorney argued instability, a single woman in a small cottage with no formal adoption papers and no partner. Karen stood up calmly. "Your Honor, this child has had the same address for 6 years, the same school for 6 years, the same doctor, the same library card, the same woman making her breakfast every morning for 6 years. The petitioner has had 3 addresses in 2 years. A marriage that is 11 months old, and 0 documented contact with this child in her entire life. If stability is the standard, the evidence is not ambiguous." Judge Morrison looked at Derek. "You're asking this court to remove a child from the only home she has ever known. Based on what?" She turned to Nadia. "I'm ordering a formal adoption process be initiated immediately with court support. Petition for custody by the biological father is denied." Nadia exhaled. Not dramatic. Just a breath she had been holding for weeks finally leaving her body. In the hallway, Iris was sitting on a bench with her legs swinging. She looked up when Nadia came through the doors. She didn't ask what happened. She read it on Nadia's face. Iris ran. She hit Nadia so hard, they both stumbled. Nadia caught her and held her, and they stood in that courthouse hallway wrapped around each other while people walked past like it was just another Tuesday. I stood back. This was their moment. Their 6 years coming to a close. Their promise kept. Then Iris pulled back and looked at me. She walked over slowly. studied my face the way she always did. "You stayed," she said. "I did," I answered. She stepped forward and hugged me, quick, tight, gone before I could fully react. But I felt it everywhere. That evening we sat on the porch of the cottage. Iris was inside with Soldier asleep on her bed. The sky was turning orange and pink. The street was quiet. Nadia sat beside me with her knees pulled up, quiet for a long time. The kind of quiet that isn't empty, the kind that's full of things finally settling into place. 6 years, she said. 6 years, I repeated. I kept my promise, she said softly. I know, I said. She turned to me. Her eyes were clear, not exhausted, not guarded, just open. "Why do you keep showing up?" she asked. The first time she asked me something like this, it was suspicious. The second time, it was curious. This time, she already knew the answer. She just wanted to hear me say it. "Because you're not someone I walked past," I said. "You're someone I walked toward." "I'm not going to be easy," she said. "I know," I replied. "Iris comes first. Always. She should. And I haven't done this in 6 years. That's fine," I said. "I'm patient. It's literally my job." She laughed. Real, full, the kind that shakes your shoulders. She leaned her head against my shoulder and let out a long, slow breath, like she was setting down something she had been carrying since before I ever met her. From inside the house, Soldier barked once, then silence. "He's dreaming," I said. "About what?" she asked. "Probably about the girl who picked him up off the road and carried him somewhere safe." Nadia squeezed my hand. "You know what the town is going to say," she murmured. "They'll say the woman in the cottage finally let someone in," I said. "And what will you say?" she asked. I looked at her in the fading light, the yellow kitchen glowing behind us, the sound of a child sleeping. Safe. The warmth of a hand I wasn't ready for but wasn't going to let go of. "I'll say I asked her why she had been alone for 6 years," I said. And her answer wasn't what I expected. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was the strongest kind of love I've ever seen. The kind that gives up everything and asks for nothing. And I'll say that the woman who carried a wounded dog into my clinic on a rainy night didn't just save him, she saved me too. She just doesn't know it yet. Nadia lifted her head and looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "I know it," she said softly. And on that porch, in the last light of a day that started with fear and ended with something I can only describe as home, I understood something I had missed for 9 years of fixing what was broken. You can heal almost anything if you're patient. But love is not something you heal. It's something you choose. And she chose to walk through my door. And I chose to leave it open. If this story touched your heart, if you felt something real watching this, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on that notification bell so you never miss a story like this again. We pour our hearts into every single one of these, and the only way we can keep bringing them to you is if you're here with us. Subscribe, bell on, and I'll see you in the next one.